Philip Markoff was the definition of potential. A second-year medical student at Boston University, he looked like someone who'd made all the right decisions. He was tall, clean-cut, articulate, the type of young man who could walk into a room and instantly win the confidence of everyone in it. His professors called him gifted. His classmates thought he was brilliant. His fiancée, Megan McAllister, thought he was perfect. They had met while volunteering at a local hospital, two ambitious students drawn to the world of healing. Their relationship blossomed quickly. Friends said they were inseparable. In pictures, they looked like a couple from a university brochure. Smiling, arms around each other, a future full of promise. Engaged within a year, Megan gushed about Philip on social media. She called him her rock, her doctor-to-be, her best friend. She showed off her engagement ring proudly, often flashing it alongside her bright, hopeful smile. The two began planning a beautiful beach wedding in New Jersey. There was talk of house hunting, of residency programs, of a long life together. To the outside world, it was a textbook story of success, a fairy tale built on achievement, ambition, and love. They studied together late into the night. Philip was known for pulling 12-hour study marathons, his nose buried in anatomy textbooks, meticulously color-coding notes. He didn't party much. He didn't drink heavily. He was the type who double-checked his flashcards even during dinner. Megan found that dedication inspiring. Philip was neat, disciplined, methodical. He kept his dorm room like a surgeon's table, not a book out of place, not a single mess. Everything had a purpose. Even his workout schedule was tightly planned between lectures and labs. He gave the impression of a man in control, a man who had everything to lose, and yet was so sure he'd never lose it. But fairy tales are only skin deep. Behind every smile in their photos was something hidden, something that never made it into the captions. Philip wasn't just studying medicine. He wasn't just preparing for a future with Megan. He was also nurturing a darker curiosity, one that festered in silence, one that the people closest to him never saw coming. He kept it well hidden, buried beneath flashcards and anatomy books. But it lived in his browser history, in his late-night emails, in the parts of the internet where most never dare to go. At 2 a.m., while Megan slept, Philip stayed online. In forums not meant for the casual viewer, he scrolled through ads, clicked anonymous links, and dove into spaces where people were just avatars, just usernames, just shadows. He explored the erotic services section of Craigslist, a category buried beneath mundane listings for apartments and used bicycles. But in this space, things were different. Anonymous. Dangerous. It wasn't just about attraction. It was about access. Access to people who wouldn't ask too many questions. That was where it started. The quiet descent. No outbursts, no warning signs, just clicks and messages, and one step closer to the unthinkable. A second life. A double life. One that would soon step out of the shadows and into the national spotlight. Every night, after lectures ended and his textbooks were closed, Philip Markoff logged on. But not to study, not to chat with classmates or email professors. No, he entered a world invisible to the people around him. He began frequenting the dark corners of Craigslist, not the job postings or roommate listings, but the erotic services section. There, he browsed through ads like someone might skim a catalog. It was transactional, anonymous, risky, and for Philip, intoxicating. This wasn't a moment of weakness or impulsive curiosity. It was a ritual. Each night, after Megan had fallen asleep, he'd slip quietly into this other world. The apartment would be silent, save for the hum of the laptop and the click of the keys. Philip used burner emails. created fake names. Sometimes he posed as Andy, other times Tom. Always polite, always composed. His messages weren't overtly aggressive, they were structured, almost professional. But the intent behind them was something else entirely. He contacted dozens of women, sex workers, masseuses, escorts. He scheduled meetings, sent directions, agreed on prices. He asked for room numbers. He asked for specific services. He kept logs, even created folders to track conversations. But not all of these encounters were what they seemed. Some ended quietly. Some left no trace. Some women never reported what happened. Some didn't even know what he'd planned to do. What we do know is this: his obsession grew. It became a routine, a release, a second existence that no one in his medical life, not professors, classmates, not even Megan, had the faintest clue about. While others were cramming for finals or planning clinical rotations, Philip was scripting his double life. His mind lived in two parallel tracks. One that passed him off as the charming, brilliant future doctor, and another, darker, colder, that saw people as tools in a private experiment. But one message changed everything. In early April 2009, Philip found an ad for Julissa Brisman, a 25-year-old aspiring model and masseuse. She was based in New York but traveled often to meet clients. She'd posted in Boston that week, staying at the Marriott Copley Place. Her ad was straightforward, her tone cautious. Julissa was smart, experienced. She followed safety protocols, but Craigslist, by its very nature, offered no guarantees. They exchanged messages, arranged a time. The evening of April 14th, Julissa texted a friend when he arrived, and then silence. That night, she was found in the hotel hallway, unresponsive. A guest had heard a struggle, someone screaming. But it was over in seconds. 3 gunshots, a broken skull, no witnesses, no name. Just a blurry surveillance image of a young man in a baseball cap, walking casually through the hotel lobby like he'd just paid his bill, calm, unbothered, almost invisible. What happened in that room? No one knows the full story, but the aftermath was undeniable. The scene was brutal, the evidence sparse. No wallet left behind, no fingerprints, just fragments, and a silence that followed. Julissa Brisman had become the first known victim of a killer hiding behind a screen. And police? They had only just begun to piece it together. The murder of Julissa Brisman wasn't just shocking, it was terrifying. A brutal act committed in a high-end hotel in the middle of downtown Boston by a man no one suspected. Room 1426 became a crime scene that would fracture the illusion of safety for an entire city. Hotel staff responded quickly. A guest had heard shouting, violent, desperate, and called for help. By the time someone reached her, Julissa was lying in the hallway. Blood pooled around her. She had been shot 3 times, and her skull had been fractured by a blunt force. She was pronounced dead on the scene. The hallway outside room 1426 was frozen in silence. Guests watched nervously from behind doors, peering through peepholes as paramedics wheeled out her body. The hushed voices of hotel staff filled the radio channels. Something terrible had happened, and no one had seen it coming. The first responders didn't have much to go on. No eyewitnesses, no personal effects belonging to the attacker. No fingerprints, no DNA, no apparent motive. But they did have one thing: security footage. A nearby camera caught a young man leaving the building shortly after the estimated time of death. He was wearing a dark jacket, jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low. His face was partially obscured, but his posture stood out. Calm, composed, not hurried in the slightest. He didn't run. He didn't look back. He simply walked away, down the corridor, out of the lobby and into the night. It was like he had done it before, like it was routine. Boston police immediately started pulling hotel records, digital logs, and any scrap of evidence they could find. There was urgency in the air, because just days earlier, another woman had reported a similar encounter. She was a Las Vegas dancer, traveling through Boston. She too had posted on Craigslist. She too had arranged a meeting at a hotel, but in her case, the man didn't kill. He tied her up, pointed a gun at her, robbed her, then left, calmly, quietly, just like before. The description matched: tall, well-spoken, clean-cut, and strangely unemotional. He didn't threaten her with rage. He gave orders like someone used to being obeyed, almost clinical. The woman later described him as chillingly polite. Police started to suspect they weren't dealing with a one-time killer, but a serial predator. Someone developing a method, a pattern. Someone who felt completely in control. They began cross-referencing logs from both hotels, looking into who accessed Wi-Fi, who paid with cards, who used emails or guest accounts. Still, the digital trail was murky. This person had been careful, almost too careful, with the calm demeanor, the sense of confidence. It was familiar, not from mugshots or known offender, but from somewhere else entirely. A student, a future doctor, a man no one suspected. Philip Markoff was about to become the center of a storm he could no longer hide from. When the Boston police finally caught a glimpse of their suspect, he didn't look like a monster. He looked like someone they might have seen in a lecture hall, in a library, or volunteering at a blood drive. Philip Markoff. He was 23, a second-year med student at Boston University, engaged to a beautiful woman. No prior criminal record, no known history of violence. On paper, he was the success story every parent dreamed of. A future doctor. A man who wore scrubs by day and helped tutor struggling classmates by night. Megan McAllister, his fiancée, was proud to be by his side. They were planning their wedding, house hunting, dreaming. But behind the scenes, he was unraveling. As detectives looked deeper, small details began to crack the surface. They traced email addresses used in the Craigslist communications. Burner phones were tied to towers near Markoff's apartment. Surveillance footage at both hotel scenes bore a chilling resemblance. Walk, cap, calm. Then came the nail in the coffin, a credit card. One of the victims had written down the last 4 digits of a card used to book a meeting. Police ran it. It belonged to Philip Markoff. What were the odds? A clean-cut medical student, moonlighting as an armed predator? But the evidence didn't lie. On April 20th, 2009, just 6 days after Jalissa's murder, police pulled him over on I-95. He was driving with Megan on the way to Foxwoods Casino, calm, polite, cooperative, like nothing was wrong. Inside his car, police found zip ties, a handgun, duct tape, shell casings matching the bullets used on Jalissa, all neatly tucked in a hollowed-out medical textbook, a textbook about human anatomy turned into a container of death. Who does that? Who hides a weapon in the heart of a book about saving lives? The arrest shocked the nation. News anchors repeated the same phrase again and again. He had everything going for him. Friends couldn't believe it. Professors were stunned. Megan, devastated. Her entire life, her love, her future had been built on a lie. She refused to believe it at first. Called the accusations a mistake. Said her fiancé would never do such a thing. She stood by him, even gave a public statement defending his character. She described him as gentle, brilliant, misunderstood. But the evidence was overwhelming. Philip wasn't just living a double life. He had compartmentalized himself, carefully, surgically, like a man prepping for dissection. 1 part boyfriend, 1 part future surgeon, 1 part killer. The transformation was invisible, even to the person who slept beside him every night. His apartment was searched. Police found bags of women's lingerie, multiple cell phones, plastic gloves, and a stash of hotel key cards. Each item cataloged, each item chilling. He had a drawer labeled with dates. He kept notes, printed directions, maps with circles drawn in red ink. And the strangest part, there were no signs of panic, no attempts to destroy evidence. It was as if part of him wanted to be caught. Or maybe he believed he never would be. The man they once saw as disciplined now looked methodical in the darkest sense. Each choice he made, from the Craigslist accounts to the type of victims he selected, suggested planning. Cold planning. And behind every detail there was only one question left. Why? What would drive a man like this, with so much ahead of him, to risk it all in the most violent, chilling way? The courtroom wouldn't give all the answers. The truth was messier than motive, and darker than anyone could explain. But the trial was just beginning. After Philip Markoff's arrest, the media frenzy was relentless. He became a tabloid obsession, dubbed the Craigslist Killer. Every photo, every past detail of his life was dissected. Talk shows speculated. News anchors debated motives. His face appeared on nightly broadcasts. Reporters stood outside the courthouse, hungry for any update. But amid the chaos, the families of the victims grieved quietly. Julissa Brisman's family, shattered. Her mother, unable to sleep. Her father, haunted by a question he'd never answer. Why her? The evidence against Markoff was extensive. Surveillance footage, the items found in his apartment, ballistics matching the murder weapon, his digital footprint, searches, emails, logins, his face on camera, his car on traffic cams. But there was something deeper that unsettled investigators. His calm, his icy composure. He didn't protest. He didn't panic. Even in handcuffs, Markoff seemed detached, clinical, as if observing it all from the outside. Markoff pleaded not guilty. His defense team began preparing a case, arguing that the evidence was circumstantial, that someone else could have used his computer, his account, that there was room for doubt. But behind the scenes, cracks began to show. He was placed on suicide watch almost immediately. In jail, he grew distant, isolated. Megan, once the love of his life, cut ties with him. She issued a statement, heartbroken, disillusioned, stating that the man she loved was not the man behind bars. Her wedding dress, unworn, was boxed away, her future erased. Markoff began to deteriorate. Guards noted he had stopped eating. He refused to speak with counselors. He refused medication. He read legal books in silence but communicated with no one. Psych evaluations reported severe depressive symptoms, increasing paranoia, and a complete emotional shutdown. Twice, he attempted to take his own life. Both times, jail staff intervened. He was moved to a higher security watch. Cameras, constant observation. But even under scrutiny, Markoff began plotting. The trial was scheduled. Prosecutors were ready. Witnesses were lined up. Forensic analysts, hotel staff, survivors. The courtroom was set to be filled with journalists, spectators, and grieving family members. Justice was in reach, but it never happened. On August 15, 2010, the date that was meant to be his wedding day, Philip Markoff was found dead in his cell. He had slit major arteries using a sharpened jail-issued pen. He also suffocated himself with a plastic bag. Blood smeared on the wall spelled one final word: Megan. It was as if he'd saved his last performance for her. His death left the victims' families without closure. No trial, no sentencing, no public confession. And still, the question lingered. Who was Philip Markoff really? Was he a monster hiding in plain sight, or a fractured man who cracked under the weight of his own hidden urges? We may never know the full truth, but for the lives he shattered, the pain, the terror, the story ends in silence. Philip Markoff never faced a jury, never uttered a confession in court, never offered an explanation. And for those left behind, the victims, their families, even the investigators, his suicide was not closure. It was a vanishing act, a final escape. In the aftermath, law enforcement continued to probe deeper into his digital world. His laptop held thousands of internet searches, dozens of hidden email accounts. He had bookmarked escort ads, rehearsed meeting spots, cross-referenced travel times. There were entire folders labeled by alias, entire virtual trails pointing to a man who didn't just commit a crime, he engineered one. He'd lived a life most would envy. Med student, engaged, stable. And yet, in secret, he spent months meticulously planning violence. Investigators feared there may have been more victims, encounters that never got reported. Some may have walked away, never knowing how close they came. Others may not have been so lucky. Across the country, police began reviewing cold cases, assaults in hotels, Craigslist-related incidents. Some matched his profile. None were conclusively tied to him, but the shadow of doubt stretched long. The Craigslist Killer case didn't just leave families broken. It changed the way the internet was used. The incident forced Craigslist to shut down its adult services section. Public pressure mounted. Politicians debated internet regulation. Online anonymity was no longer seen as harmless. It was now seen as dangerous, even deadly. For Megan McAllister, the trauma was unfathomable. Her wedding day turned into a grim anniversary. She left the spotlight, changed her name, relocated. For years, tabloids speculated, but she never returned to public life. Imagine loving someone so deeply and realizing they were a stranger all along. Julissa Brisman's family turned heartbreak into purpose. They launched a foundation in her memory. They worked to educate others about the risks of online encounters. They spoke at schools, lobbied for laws. Her name became a rallying cry for digital safety. This case wasn't just about one man's darkness. It was about the illusion of safety, the fragility of trust, the terrifying truth that you can vet someone, research them, love them, and still not know who they truly are. Philip Markoff became a symbol, not just of betrayal, but of an era waking up to its own vulnerabilities. No trial, no cross-examination, no final verdict. Just an unfinished story, whispered in courtrooms, classrooms, and across digital forums. The Craigslist Killer wasn't just a headline. He was a mirror, reflecting the hidden risks in modern connection. A reminder that behind the perfect resume, the smiling photo, and the polished words, something darker might be waiting. A brilliant student, a devoted fiancé, a silent predator. 3 identities, 1 man, no justice.